bucur să vă văd în seara asta aici, în Arad, la Filarmonică, în sala mică. Mulțumesc! To use a microphone. Okay. I'm Nita Stoica. I'm an artist but also art teacher in Arad at the Arad High School. And I represent the association Doar, mâine, only tomorrow. That is one of the two associations that has projects in the program of the Timișoara, European Capital of Culture 2023. This year we had a project more focusing on piloting our view for the next year. And today we had the honor to have Christl Baur, the head of the festival from Ars Electronica Linz. We are really happy to connect MAFA Festival, organized by Icon Arad, and Ars Electronica Festival in Linz. We consider that this is a huge opportunity for MAFA to meet organizers and artists at the same level. I represent the project Post-educacia, Pedagogii of Crisis, that focuses on bringing into education different strategies through art education and using art at looking at current crises in our society, like global warming, war, epidemic, crisis, and other problems that we are facing, and in the future. So, thank you very much for being here with us, and I invite Christl to present you Ars Electronica. Thank you so much.
I think I'm going to try it without microphone. Please simply let me know if you cannot hear me, okay? Well, thank you so much, dear Nita, dear Kalin, for inviting me, for really initiating this collaboration. It's been incredible already to see what's all happening, and I can't wait for the exhibition opening tonight. And Mika, thank you so much for initiating this visit here, actually,
thank you,
and that collaboration opportunity. Yes, so I've been asked to think about a little bit post-colonialism, post-education, you see where I'm coming from now. No, but to think a little bit of what programs Ars Electronica does in terms of education. And because I wasn't completely sure of what the audience is going to be like, I will start very briefly introduce what Ars Electronica is, and then move on to some examples of what we especially did within this year's festival. To bring different groups together to talk about what maybe the necessity, the future of education is. But for the moment, I mean, imagine yourself standing on this hill looking over Seoul, actually. This was an image that somehow represented a little bit for me the current state we're in, somehow living at the edge of humankind. So we can, make this or that decision, and in the worst case, we fall with both. And if we look at our world today of how fragile it is, of somehow almost at the edge of collapse, listening to the news daily becomes, in the worst case, the worst part of your day. The dependencies that especially the West has with countries I don't want to name now really come to the surface with the war in the Ukraine. And the struggle of especially the countries in the global south to survive the already really existing consequences of the climate change are quite threatening to our whole global society. So what is the role of arts, and what especially is the role of education connected with arts? In such a kind of time, I mean, we fool ourselves if we just talk about education. We need to take the time into account where we live in. And before I go in that topic, just quickly, so this is Ars Electronica, the building in Linz. And Ars Electronica was founded 43 years in 1979. And the credo that we always had was art, technology, but always for society. And that never changed in the whole existence of Ars Electronica, and that was really smart. In '79 to already start with this kind of perspective, because it allowed you to work with artists, to work with technology, to also work with the scientists behind that, but to never forget for whom we are doing it and for whom we need to integrate into this program. So allow me to take you quickly back to the very beginning of Ars. I have a quick snippet from the very first festival. So it's in German.
Ein Ehrengastland in Linz mit dem Auftrag, die erste Ars Electronica zu eröffnen. Staatstag im Jahr 2012 der erste elektronisch gesteuerte Roboter vom damaligen Bürgermeister Partener begrüßt.
Opening me, Herr Tag 12.
So you need to imagine, Linz in '79 was an industrial city, an incredibly polluted city, sitting between Vienna and Salzburg, the capitals of high culture in Austria. So at that moment, the mayor, which you've seen in kind of welcoming the robot here, he wanted to create a place for living. He wanted to create a place for the society, so he wanted to do this through arts. And the question was really at that time, do we build another opera house or another theater, or do we try something different because between Salzburg and Vienna it makes simply no sense. And because the city and the inhabitants were already quite connected with technology through the industry of the city, they decided to do a festival for new technologies. For the PC, and especially at that time, it was the first years of when people started buying personal computers for their homes. And the really smart move they did at that time, and Hannes Leopolds-Eder, he's one of the founders of Ars Electronica, and he was at the same time the director of the TV broadcasting station, so he knew how to use the medium of TV to really create a visibility of the festival. But what he did not just create a festival for the crowd of experts, or the scientists, or the artists. At that time it was around 20, not that much, not more. But he created a second part of the festival, and that really reached the whole citizens of Linz. And that second part is called the sound cloud, the Klangwolke. And the sound cloud is still a part of the festival annually. It attracts more than 100,000 visitors every year from the local regions of Austria to come to the Danube, the huge riverbank. And there is going to be huge spectacles with ships, with lights, with dancers, with, something that is not forcefully pleasing the very few media artists, but really attracting the crowd. And this never changed. So this credo of doing something that advances a special research that is usually done by a rather small group, but at the same time not forgetting for whom you do it, inviting everyone to be part of the festival, is actually that I'm convinced is the reason that Ars Electronica turned 43, because a lot of arts festivals simply get cancelled at some point. But that was key to the success. Now getting back to the topic I started with. So we usually talk, Ars Electronica, especially the music. Okay, wow, that was impressive. Scheduled.
When was that?
It was the right slide for it. No, but Ars Electronica, and especially the museum, is always known as the museum of the future. But what is this future, and when we take it apart, the question is, when is the future? And where is the future, or what is the future? And when is the future is rather simple to answer. It's always the next moment. It's something that we always wait for and we somehow reach but never reach. Way more interesting is the what is the future. And that is something that we can actually change ourselves. We make those decisions of what our future is. And especially when we look at AI, when we look at the development of machine learning and this looming threat that somehow is predicted. Keep it coming. That someone is predicted to happen at the mid of this century, this moment of singularity, when help us human beings somehow. This is, especially for the public that is not deep in the research, is a super frightening moment because you don't know what to expect. And it takes a lot of education and it takes a lot of different approaches to explain that this does not have to forcefully be a frightening moment, because we simply don't know actually. So instead of allowing ourselves to get afraid, instead of teaching students or others to get afraid of a moment we don't know if or when it ever will happen, we should take the chance to really look deeper into those actual technologies, open up the black boxes. And I'm going to tell you also maybe a little bit of the examples how we did that at least. And this third part is, of course, where is that future going to happen? And, well, I mean, we don't need to speculate on that. I mean, it's very clearly that the future is going to happen here on our planet and not somewhere else. Not somewhere and somehow Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk or whoever, those technologists look for this escape into our solar system or into the metaverse, which is something, I don't know, I don't understand, but hey. What, however, I found is way more interesting that in the situation where we are already in, the coexistence between human and machine progressed rather quickly. And we see it very nicely in this rather rough sketch, actually, that technology is maybe one of the most important inventions of humankind and achievements of humankind. And in the diagram, we can see how quickly a human population grew in connection with the invention of technology. And so our success is so intrinsically connected with the invention of technology. And that is, for example, one of the great examples. In between, there are just 25 years. Both show the dwarf planet Pluto. And you see what we humans did. It was not some strange force. It's not technology that did it. It's us humans that created the technology to have now an image of Pluto that is like this and not anymore the black pixels that we see on the other side. And we can use that technology to really make a difference on the planet where we actually live. That is just a more detailed graph of what we've seen before. That if we look at the success of especially digital technology and and we usually consider this as the achievement of a couple of pioneers. You know, the ones that come out of Silicon Valley, the couple of the big 5 companies that we know in the technological field. But if we look at this graph of how quickly human population was raising, it almost doubled in the last 60 years. Technology is not an achievement by the very few. Technology is an achievement of the human population. It would not have been possible for the very few to do something without the whole rest. And so we think we need to change the storytelling here. It is all of us that made this possible. Still, however, we feel it somehow very natural that just only a very few benefit out of the achievements of everyone in the end. We feel it's, we don't feel it's okay, but we don't know what to do against it, that individuals, from a capitalistic point of view, profit from the companies that they have created while extracting data and knowledge from the big masses. And it's of course not a coincidence that, it is a coincidence, but somehow connected, of course, that in 1989 Tim Berners-Lee invented or created the World Wide Web, while in the same year the Berlin Wall fell. And therefore opening really up our societies into the capitalistic world. I mean, that gave the push for the whole network to grow and to really take on that movement. What I started in my presentation with, and the title is this topic of art thinking, and it relates to the reason of why we work with artists and not with designers or others. I mean, we do work with designers, but we really focus on artists actually. And one of the credos that we try over so many years is that the perspective that artists can bring into our society, that they have a place at every table where decisions are made, whether it's in politics, whether it's in Whether it's in, in the councils or whatsoever, you always, we are already in a state where we have different fields of expertise in such kind of grounds. But arts are hardly ever presented there or represented there. So, within the Future Lab, actually, this is a program that we have created in the last years, where we created a workshop, especially for the industry programs, especially for industry partners, to understand what is the difference, not the difference between design and art thinking, but what really art thinking can bring to their need, to their community, to their field of expertise, and what artists can bring to them. So this is a workshop where we start together with an industry partner, for example, to look at different artistic projects. And the goal is not to find a solution to something, to some problem that they have, but to find a creative question. A creative question that tackles a situation of our society in relationship to their business, in relationship to the topics they need to discuss. And then, in discussion again with different artists and expert members from, in this case, the Future Lab, we work on prototypical solutions, and then you go out again into the public to talk to the public of whether this is something where they also feel represented. Is that outcome, is that prototype something that only, again, benefits the very few and exploits the others? Or is an institution, is an industry able to recognize that they're benefiting of others, and maybe thereby able to change their product, their perspectives, in order to make it more responsible? So this is an ongoing program, and I think really that this credo of bringing artists into every workshop, into every discussion, into every moment, we simply should not forget. Because we can always remind ourselves when we are again in a situation where decisions need to be made, whom did we consult there? Did we consult the person that is making the decisions in terms of budget? Yeah, very likely. Did we consult that, the board members who have, a final say in yes or no? Very likely too. But did we bring in different expertise that maybe highlight other topics that we keep forgetting? And one interesting project is, for example, Simon Becker, the Google Map. Perhaps it's not a new project, he's been developing it 2 or 3 years ago. And it highlights a little bit this subversive creativity that artists have, and in intrinsically changing our system in a very easy way. So what you see here is actually Berlin. And Simon Becker got himself 99 old cell phones that you see in the cart, that he drags across a bridge in Berlin. A bridge that is usually always closed because there are so many cars, so many traffic on that bridge. So he kept passing forth and back with his cell phones for, 1 hour or something like that, until he noticed on Google Maps, Google Maps recognized his movement, recognized the 99 cell phones, and thought it's a traffic. And what happened then, of course, the cars, or the drivers, working with Google Maps to find their ways, they took a different route to not stand in traffic. And suddenly, he created, with a very simple approach, some calmness and quietness for his neighborhood. And talking about art thinking, this is exactly what I mean. You don't always need huge budgets. You just need this moment where you look at the coin from a different perspective, where you can look at it from a subversive point of how can you change technology, because no one can change Google. But we can maybe hack Google in a way that we see, and we can hack maybe other technologies in a different way. For me, this is one of the most important image of today, and especially of our coming decade. And maybe we should all look at this image every morning we wake up first thing. Because if we don't change our habits, and we see here that we have merely 3 years, until it might get very bad. And 3 years, a human lifetime is nothing. In other species' lifetime, it's even less. So, the emissions of the greenhouse gas fell sharply in 2020 because of the pandemic. We humankind were all locked at home. We hardly flew, we hardly moved outside. And however, in 2021, just a couple of months later, the CO2 emissions again surpassed the record of 2019 by 19%, were 12% higher than in 2010, and by more than 50% higher than in 1990. And it just shows us very brutally that we are failing on literally every level of what we do. And it's not nice, I know it's not nice. But working in the art fields, it might not seem immediately our responsibility, but it doesn't matter where we work in. It's all of our responsibility. And we should take this into account in whatever we do. We have 3 years to make a change. And from reducing our emissions. And well, that was the most important graph. Maybe this is the most important quote from Greta at COP26, just in the beginning of the year in Glasgow. Yeah, I don't need to say anything. I mean, we all know what she means there. But we should take that seriously. And one of the projects in that context, what I found, oh shit, somehow, it's Sam Levine, I'm sorry, cut off the name. One of the projects that actually got an award in the Ars Electronica this year really highlights on that problem. And they propose, with those chairs actually, that we sleep every day a minute longer. So they created a tool, an app, that changes our alarm clock every day to 1 minute later automatically. So the alarm just sounds 1 minute later every day. Why? Because when we sleep, we don't consume. We don't go anywhere, we don't do anything, we don't produce any CO2 emissions, we don't leave any footprint behind. So, of course, one provocative approach is we should all simply sleep a little bit more. And that connects also to the political system, because especially in Germany, for example, I know it from Germany, that as a politician it's not possible to sleep longer than 6 hours every night, because you simply miss the meetings where decisions are made. So you cannot sleep longer than 6 hours. And I mean, we have zombies walking around there with a lack of sleep, making decisions for our country, for our society. And this somehow, and we all know how, we react. I mean, oh yes, I just slept 4 hours this year and I'm still functioning somehow, It somehow became this goal to reach, to really function even if you sleep very little. And why is that so essential for a capitalistic society? Why is that a goal to reach? I mean, we really should sometimes rethink the way that we act and the values that we put onto others. And artistic projects like Tigas and Sans, they allow us to maybe stop and to, with that simple question, actually maybe change something in our daily habits. And now going a little bit more into the educative part of the festival, we are not an academic institution, so education is not the most important goal of what we do. However, education is a big part of many of the different activities that we have been doing for years. In a different way than, of course, a school or a university does. So, what was always important is that we worked with adults, but also with children in all different age ranges, in different ways. And Create the World is a program that has been there for almost 20 years now, and that has been focusing throughout the year in different activities on the support of kids in the different stages of their life. So one of them is the Ars Electronica, and they're all somehow connected. So the Ars Electronica is not only the international so-called Oscar for Media Arts, but it has one category that focuses on young creators and young professionals from Austria. So throughout the year, our team works with high schools, works with elementary schools, primary schools in Austria, with the teachers together there, to bring artists into the schools, to talk to them, to develop projects, to bring them into the museum on the other side. And in the end, those projects that the young kids create, and here it's not not important that it's media art. The medium does not matter. It can be a drawing that they submit, it can be anything. What, you know, for them is important. They can submit it, and in the end we have a lot of different prizes, so a lot of kids get recognition there, and they all are presented in an exhibition within the festival, directly in connection to the international top artist. And that means something. For a kid of 15 years, of 9 years, if you are presented to an international crowd, you get a visibility and you get really a push in what you want to do. And many of those people that were recognized in the Prix, they now moved on to working for ISA or ISO or, you know, big institutions doing quite a lot of interesting things. And this exhibition is, of course, part of the festival, and part of the festival is not only that, but also a whole festival in the festival, and that's called the Creative World Festival. And here the activities are actually mainly in German, because really the focus is on the local community, on the local crowd, and the kids, they bring their parents, they bring their grandparents, they bring their whole families there, and that's also why we have open labs. So those are workshop situations where you can understand of how robot is programmed, you know, from a quite basic approach, so that the kid with 9 can do something there and the kid with 19 can do something there. And we have a prize ceremony, we have something like a Hebocon, we call it. It's an annual contest where they where self-made robots coming out of old tools are fighting against each other. So quite entertaining, but in an educative way that tries to push them to continue that research, that curiosity that they develop. And I'm building it up a little because this really is a part for everyone until 19. And the next program I'm showing you is the Festival University. This is only a recent program, and we did it this year for the second time. And that's really focusing on students. It's like a summer school. We invited 200 students from around 70 countries to Linz to spend 4 weeks in their summer with us. And the purpose was especially to not invite only students from university, but already from 16 years old until 26. So the ones that are just before their start into university. And the goal of the Festival University is to understand what skills do the students want to learn, and especially if they don't just come from European countries, but they came really from, you see the representation of the countries there where they came from really all around the world, and to understand what skills do they want to acquire in order to, you know, deal with the next coming decades. How do they expect education to change so that they learn what they need to learn, because, and we know all that the systems are slow. I mean, but we wanted to really ask them, and that was a project that was quite politically backed, so there was really an interest, and the reason is that in Upper Austria a new university is found next year, and it's supposed to be a university for digital technology, especially also connected with the arts, so we're going to see, it's a bit of a political discussion at the moment, we're going to see where it goes. But it was part of the research to understand of what the next generation want to learn, so that maybe, hopefully, the curricula can be adapted to such needs. And that's a little video, an insight into the program.
They are in a position that they did not choose.
Climate change is a threat.
Welcome to Festival University 2022.
Festival University has been an incredible and enriching experience. I got to meet so many different people, I got to interact with so many cultures, and I got to learn so many things.
I think it's the people that bring the joy and the spirit of this festival together. The Festival University is a big, huge family.
I don't think there's another planet we're going to be able to migrate to, and we have to do our best to take care of our current planet and do better in the future.
Festival University
University is that giving people a key, opening up to a door which we didn't know that existed.
So the Festival University started a little bit before the festival, but the key part of it was during the festival. And that was for a very good reason, because during the festival we have all those creative, those artists in Linz with us, and they are part of the faculty for the university. So we didn't forcefully invite lecturers in a traditional way, but we asked the artists to work with the students and to be the professors for those students, doing a lot of inspiration talks, but doing a lot of direct workshops in small groups over the weeks. And they used the 2 weeks before the festival to actually prepare the International Environmental and Climate Court, which is, of course, a moot court. It's not an actual court. But we worked with real judges, and there were 3 court sessions staged during 3 days of the festival, focusing on those 3 topics that I mentioned here: water, migration, and energy. And the students separated in individual groups and discussed of what examples they want to talk about in those court discussions. So what are the 2 different parties that stand opposite each other? So those are, of course, fictive examples, but on the other side, they reflect very much existing examples in our world. And the 3 judges that were part of the program, they actually drafted this International Charter of Environmental Fundamental Rights beforehand, based on which the whole court sessions were rolled out during the festival. And part of this charter were actually that the environment has a right, animals have a right, and a lot of those different things that don't yet exist in our legal systems around the world, or at least maybe some jurisdictive systems have parts of it, but definitely not in this extent. And we wanted to test this a little bit to see on the one side how different perspectives feed into such a court, because again, the students came from 70 different countries. Someone came from the Marshall Islands. The Marshall Islands are almost at a threat to disappear because of water level is rising. We had others coming from Pakistan. I mean, we saw some examples there that are under actual threat. So if you talk about migration, you already have within the team of the students the perspectives and the ones that might need to migrate to the countries where the others come from. So you can imagine how heated this was. How personal at some point it also got. Because of course it is the North against the South. But we need the students, and we need in the end all of us to think about this. And actually I was quite horrified to hear one of the judges, who was actually working as a judge in Austria, to say that this kind of International Charter for Environmental Rights, what he drafted for that court, is not going to be implemented, at least not in the next 50 years. The system simply does not work like that. And I mean, think about it, 50 years. What can happen in 50 years? I mean, that's horrible. We won't even have any change of the jurisdictive system in such a direction or at such an extent that we can even talk about the right of the environment, the right of water, the right of, a place to live, a safe place to live. So it was quite an eye-opening program. The sessions were actually all recorded, so the videos are online on our website if you're interested in having a deeper look at them. And some of you know this program already. This is something that has been ongoing from 2002. It's in very close collaboration with the Art University in Linz, which is just on the other side of the Danube, and we have very good collaborations with. For us, it always was key to get, even before this Festival University program, which is just very recent, but for already quite a long time, it was always key to get the students to be an active part of the festival. And to use the platform that Ars Electronica turned into in the last years to showcase their project, to especially create a network for themselves of the international art scene that comes to the festival, but especially also the other students that are part of the festival, the other professors, to on the one side compare their projects with what is happening in other places, what others are doing, what topics others are concerned with, but also especially to make friendships. And to maybe see what is another university, what is another curricula that they are interested in, where they would like to study at some point. And of course, I mean, part of the festival, it suddenly opens up, especially if so many universities are presented in one space, that the art professionals coming to the festival, they go there because where else can you discover so many different perspectives in such a condensed environment? So for many of them it becomes also, you know, maybe a new career step. And on the other side, a quite practical approach where they learn of what does it mean to make an exhibition, to prepare your own projects in a way that it can be presented in an international environment, of what kind of mediation do you need to do to get people interested in your project, what is the storytelling that you need to develop, also how do you work with your other peers together to become a group that supports each other, that helps with different skill sets. And I think it has been always really rewarding and interesting experience. And we talked about now young kids, a lot about students, and now talking about adults actually. So what is the program, the educative program that we do within Ars Electronica for teachers especially? So this is a year-long program that is not so much connected directly to the festival, but and especially we created a collaborative approach with the local schools in Austria. And that's, one of them is the Ars Electronica, the Creative World Tour, where we go with selective artists, especially coming out of U19 categories, young artists, into the schools to actually commission them workshops so they can create workshops that are then implemented in the Austrian schools for the students there, to really get into deep discussion on different topics, on current topics. The Teacher Ambassador program is something because, again, we are not an educative institution and we have very limited time and personal resources to actively work with teachers. So we created a program that asks teachers to become our ambassadors. And by our ambassador, I mean ambassadors for topics and the questions that the artists raise within the programs of Ars Electronica. And they have the role, they get on a quite regular basis teaching materials that has been developed together with artists. Some of it is online, also you can just download it. Others we deliver in terms of workshops with artists. And there's a yearly day where everyone comes together to really get an update. And the role is here to talk about technologies also, to simply answer a very basic question of also what is AI, what does it really mean? I mean, if you're working in a high school, you might not have so many connections to technological development that you might be able to answer all those questions. And then those ambassadors with the knowledge and kind of the equipment in hand, they go into their schools and they are the ones that, you know, share that knowledge with the other colleagues. And thereby, in the best case scenarios, really continue that discussion and broaden it within their schools. And they have, for example, they have free access to the Ars Electronica Center. They can always come with their peers to take part in workshops and all those kind of things. And the third part of it is an award that we initiated with the Education Ministry in Austria. And this is an award for interesting projects that the teachers develop with their students in applying digital technologies within their classes. So there was, during COVID, I think in many countries, suddenly politics give out tablets to schools because they notice no one has any tools to actually learn and work from home. And suddenly there was, you know, this huge amount of tablets and no one actually knew how to use it or what to do with it or even what kind of software to put on it so that they can connect with. So quite practical problems. And out of that came kind of the award to motivate teachers to work with their students to find applications that could then be again shared with others to benefit and to inspire them to use technologies that we have in a meaningful way. So these are some part of the project, and maybe now a very brief insight into the Ars Electronica Center. We on purpose don't call it a museum because it's not a museum. We don't have a collection. We don't store stuff. It's a very active space where the key word is participation. And it was always called as kind of the museum of the future. But in 2019, when we redesigned the whole museum space, we changed that notion because our role was always to kind of talk about the next technologies to come, what is at the horizon. But we felt much more when talking to the teachers, talking to the artists, talking to everyone else, that is not anymore so much about the technologies to come, but much more about the technologies that we have, and especially AI. And that we need something like a compass to share what are the implications of this technology, because technology is not bad. Technology is in the way that we use it, either good or bad. And it needs the empowerment of everyone to make those decisions of how you use that technology so that you can actually benefit from it. And we created a whole huge exhibition floor with artistic projects, research projects, interactive projects that show you different applications of what AI is, opening up that black box so really everyone coming to the center can just try it and see for themselves or what they are using on a daily basis already. And then the global shifts part is really then applying it to the topic of our environment, of our changing, of the global crisis. How does technology affect? What is the topic of the energy? So here we do also shifting and changing exhibitions with different artistic projects that are once in a while updated. And one project that, for example, inspired me very much is the Golden Nika in interactive art this year. And this really showed also of how perspective can be changed, because the jury members that select the winners of the Ars Electronica, it's not Ars Electronica that selects them, it's always a quite distinguished crowd of 5 international jury members that make those selections. And they chose, in this case, 2 students for the Golden Nika. One student from Taiwan, the other one from Colombia. They have been creating this project during COVID while they were sitting in their countries. So they created that project via digital media through Zoom and other networking tools. And it was really a shift in the mindset of the jury that they did not reward the obvious project, you know, very like the artist that would have, that is the pioneer that would for years have always received that prize. They decided to make a statement to award the prize to 2 artists that we've never met before. I've never heard of them before. We didn't really know about the project. We didn't really know about their artistic careers, nothing. But it made a statement that they gave the next generation the prize to inspire them, to support them in continuing their journey. And now what you see here actually is that those 2 artists are inspired by the Hong Kong movement, so by the umbrella movement in Hong Kong, and at the same time about how bacteria work with each other, how bacteria connect with each other. And they created this independent server that is connected to the umbrella, that is powered by an accu, like a power bank, and where you can create an individual, like independent network that does not allow you to access Facebook, but it does allow you to communicate in a closed system that cannot be shut down by political systems or other entities. So they created a project that can be applied, and they do that in a lot of workshops. They did workshops at the festival that can be applied in every region of the world, in places where artists live under political threat, where artists live in conditions where they cannot voice their opinion freely. And it's a rather simple tool with technology that is everywhere available. And that was really inspirational, and congrats to those young students who created that project together. And so, what should technology be able to do, and what roles do we humans play in that? What role does education play in that? And I think it's always, again, about always asking ourselves on a daily basis, what is the place that we need to redefine in the way that we use technologies? And it's about clarifying our needs and making sure that the technologies are adapted to our needs and we don't adapt to the systems of the devices. And that is a film I want to
Lever fler pratar virtual reality.
träna försiktigt ner på båda huvudet.
Ska du ner?
Ja, precis.
Det känns ju till och med kallt. Det är nästan som man bara vill ha någonting.
Det är gött. Ja, precis. Så när du går rätt fram här nu så är det precis som att grenarna kommer emot oss med dig. Visst är det amazing.
Yeah, so that was the last festival. The next one is again in September. Come. I don't have any topic yet. I don't have any sujet yet. That's going to come next year. So thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for being here. Let's enjoy the opening. So thank you for organizing this. Really.
We are a little bit late for MAFA opening, but if you have any questions, like very fast now.
Yes, of course. Sure. We can have a discussion if that very first question is answered.
So if nobody has questions, anyway, you can ask directly.
Yes, of course.
In the opening of MAFA, and now everybody has to move in the other part of the building